All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. I have a very special guest with me today that is going to be going through and showing us the way of how to deal with inflammation through food. And I know that this is a hot topic around dealing with arthritis and chronic pain. And so I wanted to bring you straight to the expert. So I'm with Dr. Ann Kulze, who is a specialist in nutrition. She has an amazing background. She's a physician by trade, best-selling author. She's also the founder of the Healthy Living School, and she's a motivational speaker. She kind of does it all. And so I want to go ahead and have her just introduce herself, tell us a little bit kind of how she got into nutrition. I actually came across her by searching just on YouTube and saw lots of good information about inflammation. I was like, I need to talk to her and share her information with my audience, because all of you out there with arthritis, inflammation is one of the biggest things that truly holds us back from finding pain relief. And so today we're talking all about food inflammation and how you can best control it. So I'm going to throw it over to Dr. Ann so she can tell us a little bit more about herself.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa, and thank you for what you do to help people live the best versions of themselves. So my story is a bit convoluted. Since I was a tiny little girl, knew I wanted to be a doctor. I come from this long legacy of medicine in my family and was on that track. And really in my kind of high school years, I got really, really interested in nutrition. I think my father kind of planted that seed. He was a surgeon, but he was someone that thought outside of the box, and he kind of got interested in it, more so from the standpoint of supplements. But anyhow, I ended up studying what I love in college, which was nutrition, thinking that if I want to go to med school, if I study what I love, I'll do really well. And I did well because I studied what I love. And when you say what you love, it's not work. You like it. And I got my undergrad degree in nutrition and went on to get my degree in medicine, and really never thought that nutrition would make its way into my professional life as a physician. But lo and behold, I kind of landed, that's a story in itself, in primary care, and kind of fell in love with primary care, just, kind of a bread and butter private family medicine practice. And as I evolved in my practice, it just became, so, kind of painfully clear to me that most of what I was seeing is, was preventable. And the data was starting to come out. So, I was in practice, say, early 90s, even a little before that. And it was really in the 90s when all this information came spewing forth about the power we have over our health through diet and lifestyle. And I saw an opportunity, as devoted as I was to clinical medicine and my patients. I had a very busy, very successful practice. I still knew that I could help so many more people by focusing on diet and lifestyle. So I took an enormous leap of faith, and left my successful practice. People thought I was absolutely, totally nuts. My husband said, and he's a physician also, he said, Ann, you need to go see a psychiatrist because you're not thinking clearly, blah, blah. But I knew it. I knew it intuitively. I knew it from looking at the data and the science. And so that's what I did. And again, I could write a book about that journey. It's included so many things, but suffice it to say, I basically bill myself as a physician who specializes in nutrition and lifestyle. So I'm trying to empower people, motivate people, inspire people in the realm of things that they can do to, live the healthiest life. At the end of the day, that is my mission. I'm most known for my expertise in nutrition. It does seem to be where most people are the most off track. It's the area of lifestyle medicine that encompasses the most information, the most teaching, but it's not just nutrition. I feel very competent in all aspects. So the fitness piece, the sleep piece, the exposure to nature piece, all of those things, the stress control piece, all those things are important. But again, we spend a lot of our time on the food part because there's so much confusion, there's so much spin, there's so much myth. And it is, for most everything, it is the foundational piece of the puzzle, that all the other things you can do through lifestyle, let's say exercise and sleep, those things can't work their magic unless you have that foundation of good nutrition in place.
Exactly. Exactly. And that, I mean, it's definitely true on all aspects. I mean, it's always a kind of a team approach, whether it's chronic pain or just general health. We have to have kind of all of these aspects. And sometimes we kind of overcomplicate and just kind of focus on one and then wonder why it's not working.
Right.
And so we kind of have to have this team approach,
Holistic.
kind of this collaboration to find the best and most optimal health.
That's
And
right.
so you mentioned there's a lot of myths, there's tons of noise out there, tons of information.
Mm,
And so what are maybe some of the common misconceptions that people have? And we'll kind of focus more on the food aspect of
sure.
food and inflammation. What are some
Now,
of the things or the confusions that you see out there?
first of all, I'm totally wedded to data, not dogma. And a lot of this myth and spin is generated by ideology and dogma. So first of all, one of the biggest ones is, people think, oh, I have no control over the actual inflammation levels in my body through foods I eat. Poppycock. That is so not true. And there have been literally thousands of studies published in the last 40 years related to food, nutrition, and inflammation. So we know that it has a, decided impact on it. And in the reality is, some foods drive inflammation and some foods quiet inflammation. And the simple goal is, what are the foods that drive it? How do I get them out? What are the foods that quiet it? How do I bring them in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so are there specific foods that if somebody was coming to you or that you kind of start with or just kind of begin to introduce or even take away as kind of a basic beginner level to reduce it?
Yeah, so I think, I always think it's logical to start, it doesn't really matter. You either start with the foods that quiet it, either way, because if we work on having people bring in more of the good, that kind of naturally shoves out the opportunity for the bad. Plus, it's what we call a positive behavior change. And we see in the behavior change literature that people find it easier. They have more success, if particularly initially when they're embarking on health, diet related behaviors. If they focus on, let me get that noise off. Sorry. If they focus on making positive changes. So let's talk about the foods that are the best for quieting inflammation. And sort of in general, whole plant foods, that's your fruits, your vegetables, your beans, your whole grains, your nuts and seeds, all of them through lots of different ways are anti-inflammatory. So kind of a whole food, more plant-based diet. Extra virgin olive oil should be the oil of choice. Herbs and spices are literally like prescription drugs in some cases in terms of their anti-inflammatory power. And there are certain ones, they're all great and they're all powerful anti-inflammatory agents, but certain ones, and we can maybe, flesh some of this out. Oily fish, because omega-3 fatty acids are so hard to come by. And that is one of your body's most powerful innate anti-inflammatory agents, the omega-3s that you get from oily fish like salmon and sardines, like trout, herring. Dark chocolate is incredible because it can help push out the unhealthy sweets. And thanks to its very, very high concentrations of multiple things, particularly the flavonols that calm, the phytochemicals that are in those cacao beans that dark chocolate is made from, also the magnesium. Those are both anti-inflammatory things. So dark chocolate should be your treat of choice. And then green tea, particularly matcha. Matcha is powdered, dry dried powdered green tea leaves. And green tea, particularly the matcha, is exceedingly, it's one of the, sort of the grand slammer foods for decreasing inflammation. So that's kind of the general approach to quieting inflammation through diet, as far as, the general categories, the buckets.
Okay.
And then on the other side, the things that you want to get out of your diet. The single most pro-inflammatory component in food is saturated fats. Thus, no surprise. And this is all from data. I'm not just making this stuff up. We have, I'll just mention this one study. It's called the Dietary Inflammatory Index. It was the most comprehensive study undertaken looking at the impact of food on inflammation. There were 48 foods within that. It encompassed over 1,000 studies. It was a review looking at all the published studies and these various things. And it included, people from 11 different countries. So it's very powerful. And in the Dietary Inflammatory Index, the most pro-inflammatory of all foods was red meat, with processed red meat being at the very, very top. And no surprise, because saturated fats are in high concentrations in those foods. But there's other things in red meat that people aren't aware of, but in addition to the saturated fat, that can drive inflammation. And then beyond that, second on the list is going to be sugar, not Mother Nature sugar in fruits and root vegetables. We're not worried about any sugar that Mother Nature naturally put in her foods. We're worried about the sugar either you put in or the food industry puts in. And most of it is coming from the food industry and processed foods like sugary foods and beverages. Then the third would be processed foods. There's a whole list. There's thousands of approved additives and preservatives that can be added to foods, and there's growing concerns that many may have pro-inflammatory effects, particularly the emulsifiers. Oh, we're really worried about emulsifiers, and they're very ubiquitous. So this is like polysorbate 80, carboxymethylcellulose, carrageenan, maltodextrin. You're going to see those things everywhere. And then alcohol, excess alcohol. So it's, again, sort of general, categories of foods to get out of your life if you want to decrease inflammation. Red meats, particularly fatty cuts, processed red meat, alcohol, too much alcohol, processed foods, and then sugar foods and beverages. So that's kind of the high level. And, and I can certainly speak to, how are these things happening? What is it in, saturated fat that does that? What is it about sugar that does that? Or vice versa. And there's additional details we can flesh out. But anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely good just to kind of have, just kind of foods on the both sides, because all the time I try to kind of tell people start with just those small things, make small decisions, maybe take, if you eat red meat more than, frequently, like a couple times a week or something, maybe decrease that frequency, and then start to introduce
exactly right.
other meats or other things. And I like what you said about kind of, instead of thinking it as like, I need to avoid all these foods, bring it in more of a positive light and say, I need to actually add in some of these foods. And I think that will definitely help with that adherence.
I would tell everyone to start with adding in the superstar anti-inflammatory foods. So like if you say, you've already heard that fruits and vegetables are really good for us. You may say, well, Dr. Anna, there's certain fruits that stand out over and above others. And there are berries. And this is a nice list. And I'm actually looking at, one of my e-courses is devoted to the anti-inflammatory, way of living and eating. Okay. And I love creating these, I call them Dr. Ann's Fridge Friends. They're cheat sheets that even I keep this sometimes on my refrigerator. Fridge Friends.
No, that's awesome.
Cheat sheet. So we have enjoy the anti-inflammatory foods. And then I'll read some of this off. And then avoid the pros. The pro-inflammatory. So the best fruits are going to be apples, citrus, cherries, berries, cantaloupe, kiwi, red grapes, mangoes, avocados, plums, and pomegranates.
Okay.
So if there are foods on that list that you love, well, can you eat more of them? Right?
Absolutely.
And then for veggies, it's a big, huge group. As a general rule, vegetables that are green, vegetables that have blue purple hues, think red onions, think red cabbage. And the green ones are obvious, it's broccoli, it's dark leafy greens. And vegetables that have red orange hues, think sweet potatoes, think tomatoes. Those are going to be, so remember those colors.
Okay.
Blue, purple, red, orange, green.
Okay.
Vegetables that have those colors. So the list would be any and all dark leafy greens, and that's one of the best foods you could do. Bell peppers, and really any color. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, carrots, onions. Now, onions is an exception. Doesn't have that color. We'll talk more about the onion family in a minute.
Okay.
Cabbage, artichoke hearts, sweet potatoes, blue, purple potatoes, tomatoes, winter and summer squash, asparagus, celery, and eggplant.
Okay.
So think green, red, orange, and then
blue and purple.
Blue, and then what about onions? So onions are a member of the allium family of vegetables, and it's easy to remember them because it's like onion-like things. So it's garlic, it's shallots, it's onions, and in any color, any variety of these things, leeks. Okay, that allium family of vegetables is a standout for inflammation and specifically arthritis.
Okay.
Knowing that your audience is particularly focusing, understandably, because you're a physical therapist, on arthritis, I, just want to make sure people know that beyond the studies just on inflammation, we have even studies on arthritis. And the allium family of vegetables, as well as the cruciferous family, many of them are green. It's cabbage, kale, cauliflower, broccoli sprouts, watercress. That family, you see, I have my broccoli t-shirt. That family, and I wore that just for y'all. That family is another really hot one for arthritis.
Okay, hot and like they're good for arthritis?
Very good. Yeah, maybe it's not the best. Maybe hot is not the best word to use for inflammation here.
So onions are good for inflammation?
Onions are fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, the entire allium family, onions, garlic, shallots, leeks, very, very, very potent and very wonderful for that.
Okay, and that's awesome. And I saw that I came across one of your blog posts about that broccoli is one of the best things for inflammation.
Yes. And remember Brussels sprouts, the active ingredients that we think is, working the magic for inflammation, arthritis, and cruciferous vegetables like broccoli is something called sulforaphane. It's a phytochemical. It's very, very famous. And it's an extraordinary phytochemical. It's just like wowing what they know it can do in the body on so many different fronts. And if you eat Brussels sprouts that are available in most grocery stores, and all the Brussels sprouts they're the immature, little seedlings, the initial sprouts from a broccoli seed, they can have up to 20 times more sulforaphane. So they are kind of a grand slammer, so you have superstar foods and then you have grand slammers. So grand slammers are the top.
Yeah.
I put Brussels sprouts as a, grand slammer for arthritis.
Okay. And that's interesting. I actually just tried those for the first time, probably about a month ago. I had never even known they were a thing. And then we got some that needed.
Very good for breast cancer protection. So I always have them in my fridge. I try to have them every day. Breast cancer runs in my family, and that's my main reason for doing them.
Yeah. So what's your favorite way to cook them?
So you do them raw, and unlike a lot of sprouts that have a horrible reputation for foodborne illness, because you may not know, but a lot of, and there's a reason for that. It's how there's never been a case of foodborne illness with Brussels sprouts. It relates to how they're growing them, how they're shipping them. And so what you do is you add them on top of your salads. You do them like you would do, bean sprouts or alfalfa sprouts.
Okay.
Add them put them in on top, in a sandwich or a wrap, whatever, kind of way, but you don't want to cook them. Sulforaphane is sensitive to heat, and it will get blemished from heat.
Okay, that was my next question. Is that kind of applicable to like all vegetables? It's better to eat them raw, or?
Great question. And this is easy to remember. Some vegetables are better for you raw. Some are better for you cooked. Even Dr. Ann has a hard time keeping the exact perfect, detailed list straight. So what I do is what I recommend people do is to be sure to have some of both each and every day. And as an example, carotenoids, which are a big family of phytochemicals, very important in quieting inflammation. And these are the pigments that give plant-based foods their orange, yellow, reddish hues, so think sweet potatoes, tomatoes. They are actually more bioavailable, and they get kind of turbocharged when they're cooked and heated. Is the way of explaining it. And then say sulforaphane, so cruciferous vegetables, sulforaphane we were just talking about, that is one that heat can diminish it. So with cruciferous vegetables, it's best to do them raw or lightly cooked. Don't overcook them. So you don't want mushy, squishy broccoli. You can have it cooked tender crisp, but don't mush it from cooking. Overcook it. Don't overcook it.
Interesting. I typically eat cooked broccoli, so.
Well, I do too. You can have it cooked, but don't overcook it. And if you can do broccoli sprouts raw, there you go.
Okay. All right. Perfect. That's very interesting. I didn't actually know that. I knew that some things were better raw and cooked, but I never really knew which ones. And so I think that a lot of the audience could probably benefit from that as well. So that's awesome. So aside from maybe food or in general, what kind of, and we can be kind of brief on this, but what kind of supplements do you recommend, if any? Because I know that is a really hot topic. And there's a lot of
in general are overrated. Always a couple general points. There'll never be a better way and place to get your nutrients than from real food. I mean, there's simply no replacing the brilliance of nature. It is no replacing that. And humans are not capable of it.
Yeah.
That said, there are some evidence-based use of supplements, particularly in the context, let's say, of arthritis, inflammation. One that comes to mind is going to be those long-chain omega-3 fats. So omega-3 fatty acids, the long-chain ones, specifically DHA and EPA, they are the primary substrate that your cells use. They're the primary building block that your cells use to produce its army of anti-inflammatory chemicals. Thankfully, our bodies can make anti-inflammatory chemicals. But they need the basic ingredients to do so. And omega-3 fats, the long chain ones, are how that happens. Well, tragically, as a result of modern food technology, modern agricultural practices, omega-3 fats, which are an essential nutrient, by the way, they are an essential nutrient, just like vitamin A and vitamin D and vitamin C. They're not left in many foods. And there's a very short list of foods that provide the long chain. In fact, it's oily. It's seafood, particularly oily fish, salmon, tuna, mackerel, sardines, lake trout, herring, and then there's a little bit in eggs, in which they've added it to the chicken feed, so the omega-3 fortified eggs. And that's really the only places you can get the long chain ones. Plant-based foods do have it: flax, chia, hemp seeds, a little bit in dark leafy greens, walnuts. But the type of omega-3 in plant-based foods is not the biologically active form. The plant-based form of omega-3 is called ALA, and it has benefits in the body, and some of it can be converted into the active forms, but the conversion can be really exceedingly inefficient. So I would tell anyone with arthritis that if they are not consuming oily fish 3 days a week, that they need to be supplementing with some form of long chain omega-3, whether it's fish oil or an algae-based DHA.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you're a vegetarian or you want to go more plant, based, you can get algae-based DHA, or you can take fish oil, high quality fish oil. They need the doses vary on supplements. You want to get, around 1,000 milligrams. If you add the DHA and you add the EPA up, it should be around a gram.
Okay.
So that's an important one. Vitamin D, exceedingly important. I cannot stress this one enough. Low levels of vitamin D are epidemic. In adults in America, 70% are deficient or inefficient. We now know that 90% of hospitalized COVID cases are low in vitamin D.
Okay, I
And
did notice that somewhere.
throw
Yeah.
that in there. And the reason is vitamin D, first of all, it has so many important roles in the body, wouldn't believe it. It's really a pro-hormone. It's a master regulator of your genome. It's a master regulator of inflammation in the body. And as you know, people that are succumbing to COVID are dying from cytokine storm, they're dying from excess inflammation, not from the virus.
Yeah.
And we know that when your vitamin D is low, you're just so high risk to have this high inflammation. So vitamin D, the best thing is to get your level checked every year. It should be checked every year. And the best time to get it checked is its yearly low, which is going to be at the end of winter, because vitamin D is something that we get, and we probably should get primarily from the sun. But we wear clothes, we wear sunscreen. Certain people live, in upper latitudes. And then if you're overweight, particularly obese, if you have diabetes, if you have darkly pigmented skin, you just can't get enough from the sun. It's getting depoted in your fat. It's not making its way to your bloodstream. So those are kind of the high risk groups. And I tell everyone, no matter what, to get their vitamin D checked every year. If it's low, you may need prescription strength doses. Only your doctor can tell you about that. But I'm just telling you, you do not want vitamin D to be low. And I think the sweet spot is a level between 40 and 50.
Okay.
I would imagine that tons of people listening to this are low. And it will make you hurt. It will make you inflamed. It will make you tired. It can make you depressed. It can increase your risk of blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, cancer. Don't get low in vitamin D.
Okay.
So I pretty much, most everyone is going to need to supplement with vitamin D. Almost everyone.
Okay. And that's definitely good to know. And that's through a blood test, correct?
Yeah, you can find, the best way to know how much you need is through a blood test. And my standard advice, and I always tell, please talk to your healthcare provider before taking these supplements, is for the average adult, if there's any such thing, take, a couple thousand, 2,000 IUs of vitamin D3 a day. But again, there are people that need 10,000. They might need 20. It just depends on kind of where they are in their situation. So omega-3 from algae-based DHA or fish oil, the vitamin D, very important, vitamin D3. Then, there's turmeric is the most potent and of all foods, according to the Dietary Inflammatory Index, that big study I referenced earlier, turmeric is the most potent anti-inflammatory of all foods. Turmeric's first, then ginger, then garlic. Okay. Just if you want to know the top three.
Okay.
Those three spices. All right. And so the active ingredient the active anti-inflammatory ingredient in turmeric is something called curcumin. So
Okay.
curcumin is a specific phytochemical. And what are phytochemicals? These are compounds in plant-based foods that developed in them over the eons to protect them from various environmental insults. We now know that phytochemicals, not only do they allow plants to stay alive and thrive in their native environments, they allow us to. And they really operate in our bodies like drugs without side effects. I always say, drug companies can only dream of creating drugs that do what these chemicals do with the greatest of ease and no side effects.
Yes.
Oh, what a gift. There are thousands of them. It's an exceedingly complicated area, but curcumin is a really, really, famous one.
Okay.
It is what gives turmeric and then curry, because turmeric is a component in curry.
Okay.
It is what gives turmeric and curry their characteristic golden yellow color. Okay. And phytochemicals are, for the most part, pigments. They're plant pigments. Blueberries are blue, apples are red. Curcumin, turmeric is yellow golden because of these pigments.
Okay.
And you can take curcumin as a supplement. There's lots of studies looking at curcumin for all kinds of things, for everything from depression to other things. And you want to be getting it. You want to get a good one. You can also take turmeric as in a capsule. But again, please talk to your healthcare provider before taking these supplements. There are certain folks that need to be careful and shouldn't do these things.
Okay.
There's not very many situations, but there are definitely some, and that's why you have to ask your doctor. Then beyond that, the arthritis joint formulas, the glucosamine, the MSM, chondroitin, they seem to be very safe. And there is some evidence that for advanced arthritis, they may provide some benefit. And I always tell people, again, assuming it's safe for you, that everyone has to check, give it a couple of months. And if it helps you, great. You can continue, maybe you should continue. But if it doesn't, don't waste your time. Because you'll know after a couple of months. So that can be kind of hit or miss. Anyway, so let's see if I'm leaving any out. Those are really the main ones.
Okay.
But,
So kind of fish oil,
vitamin
turmeric,
D.
and then what was the third?
So fish oil, turmeric, vitamin D, and then the
Vitamin D.
various concoctions of these joint formulas. Some are just plain glucosamine, some are glucosamine chondroitin, some are glucosamine chondroitin MSM. There's different combinations. So.
Okay. And because I get that question a lot, and I think it's definitely important to kind of, like you said, just check with your doctor first. I know there's some medications and things that can interact.
There are.
But then too, like if it doesn't make a difference, then we kind of just move on to the next one. I feel like it's very hit or miss.
That's right. And the other thing about supplements that you need to realize is they're not regulated, unfortunately, like prescription drugs. And you can really get impurities. You can get ingredients that are supposed to be in there that really aren't, or ingredients that are in there way higher or way lower than the package label says. So a wonderful resource, and I think it's $10 a year to subscribe to this, is Consumer Labs. I couldn't live without Consumer Labs. So they are an independent watchdog group that pulls supplements off the shelf, and now they're even getting into functional foods. They'll pull olive oil, they'll pull dark chocolate bars. They're analyzing these various brands, and they publish all this. They're looking for three things. They're looking for ingredient integrity. Do they have in them what they say they do? They're looking for bioavailability. Is what is in them truly attainable within your body? And then 3, are they free of contaminants and toxins?
Okay.
Now they also give you the best buy, like which one passes all 3 and is the cheapest. So that would be their top picks. So they always feature their top picks. And, I've been subscribing to their stuff for years. It's so easy to use their database. You just go to Consumer Labs. And again, it is subscription, $10 a year,
Okay.
I think
What's
it's not
that?
bad. And what is for me, for what I do. And you just they've tested anything you can name. I mean, every supplement, the arthritis formulas, fish oil, all of it. They've tested all of them, and they're constantly redoing it. So
Okay.
it's great. That's just a good resource to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put a link down in the show notes too so that people can go check that out because I think that's important.
Wonderful.
Always coming
I
up with
mean, yeah, people are spending billions of dollars on supplements, and it's a big industry, and many of them, I think a lot of people are not only wasting their money, I think a lot of people are actually harming themselves.
yeah.
They're paying money to harm themselves, which is
Yeah, and that's why, again, it's, like, important to see if you're actually deficient in these things and actually need some of these things in order, because there are a lot of people out there who, besides, like, changing diet and exercising and these sorts of things, they're just kinda searching for the next best supplement or the next best kinda thing
right.
that's going to, magically kind of get rid of their
And
inflammation.
it won't. I can't tell you, if you don't get the diet part down, none of those things will help. And I would say those things are kind of an add-on, maybe not the vitamin D and the omega-3, but particularly like the turmeric and the joint formulas, they would be an add-on to your diet.
Okay.
You got to do the diet first. It's an illogical approach. Yeah.
Yes. No, absolutely, and it's kind of just a Band-Aid of a lot of other things that are going on, um, and so what is to kind of wrap things up, what is kind of the number one tip as far as if someone is watching this, they have arthritis, they're not really sure where to start? I know we talked initially about all of these foods that you can either add or take away, but what is kind of the first thing that they should focus on as far as managing inflammation to find pain relief that maybe is outside of the common, add in a couple of these foods? What is something that
Yeah.
they can start doing today?
First of all, I would say just know the power of what you eat and its impact. You've got to know that and understand that. So that's the first step. That
Okay.
you have tremendous influence on this. And if you can just shift, I'd say two things. Move away from processed foods. One of the simplest ways to do it and to succeed is say to yourself before you eat a food, could my great great grandmother have eaten this? And if the
Okay.
answer was no, not always, but almost always, it's going to be processed. And I would say, don't eat it. So eat
Okay.
foods as close to how Mother Nature gave them to you, foods that don't have these labels. Because foods from nature are not required to have labels. It's only
Exactly.
foods coming out of a factory that are required to have labels. So shifting away from processed food, more toward real food. And then the second big thing is shifting away from so many animals, shifting toward plant-based foods,
Okay.
fruits, vegetables, increasing more of those, beans, whole grains, nuts, seeds. I mean, those are the superstar foods for quieting inflammation. And also, if you want to know, I mean, that's also that information I just said there sums up pretty much all of eating for optimal health, no matter if it's cardiovascular protection, cancer protection. I want to lose weight and keep it off. I mean, those are the two biggest things.
Right.
Those are the two things that define the healthiest diets. There's lots of um, iterations of optimal eating, trying to get to the best health I can be. You could be an omnivore. You can be, if you do it right. You can be flexitarian. You could be pescatarian. You could be vegetarian. You could be vegan. There's lots of iterations. As long as two things are checked off. Number one, the overwhelming majority of what you're eating is plant-based foods.
Okay.
And what did the study say? At least 75%. 90 is probably best.
Okay.
And the second thing is that you're eating real food, meaning you're not eating processed foods. Those are the two biggest things to work on.
And I think that,
Everyone can remember that. It would
yeah.
change your life. I just had a private coaching client, and unreal. So this woman is so lucky, and she knows it. She happened to have this scan that showed she had a encapsulated pancreatic cancer is almost universally deadly.
Yeah.
Well, hers was in the tail. It was tiny. It had not, metastasized. It was none outside this little ball, and it just shelled out. They got it all. She had, and she it was a wake up call for her. And she wasn't particularly unhealthy, but she wasn't healthy, and she just went all out. And you will not believe how she's eaten. You just won't believe the plant-based foods. Her diet would blow your mind. And she's been doing this for a year, and it's like, I just looked at her lab work. I mean, it's just almost like magic. It's just unreal.
Yeah. And that's, I think, so important. And like you had mentioned, that understanding just the power that food has, and not discrediting like, oh, if I just eat this processed thing, I shouldn't really notice a difference. Or if we just kind of brush some of these things off, I mean, it can be so powerful, both positively and negatively.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so important to realize that what we eat plays such an important role.
Huge.
I think you have definitely highlighted that as far as giving tips of, again, the foods to bring in, the foods maybe to kind of knock out, what supplements are potentially better for us, and which ones we may need to just kind of ignore or potentially try. And if they don't do anything, then again, ignore them. And so there are definitely ways as far as what we eat that is going to be so powerful for inflammation.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things that we have to look at, because if you are super inflamed, exercise is not really going to be beneficial, nor is it going to be pain relieving, probably going to be more pain inducing. And
let me touch on the other lifestyle factors, because they're really important. So weight control. So having excess body fat is you're horribly inflamed. And that adds to your joint pain in multiple ways, not only because it is a systemic inflamer, but also it adds the pressure, as a physical therapist, on our joints.
Yep.
Exercise, the right exercise is very anti-inflammatory. The right exercise.
Absolutely.
That's what we have you for.
Yes.
Sleep is very important, and controlling your stress. Getting out in nature. Nature is filled with powerful, and people don't know this, very powerful specific ingredients that decrease inflammation, from phytoncides liberated from trees, particularly evergreens, from fractal visual patterns, from nature sounds. These things literally have a direct physiologic anti-inflammatory effect. So nature, sleep, stress control, the right exercise, eating right, and then breathing right. So that's another big story coming out in wellness. Maybe what I can do for that one is just say, read the book Breath. It's mind-blowing and can change your life. Breath, the book Breath.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing book.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm actually doing a lot of people in my audience are really big into hiking as well. So we're doing a hiking workshop because of the benefits from nature and all of those things.
Right.
Benefits from just regular flat walking to hiking are exponential.
Yeah.
And so that is one thing we're actually focusing on this month.
Wonderful.
But if somebody wants to, I know you mentioned a couple ebooks and things. If somebody wants to kind of find those or find more information from you, where's kind of the best place to go?
So if you just Google Dr. Ann, DRANN, my website should be the first thing that pops up, and it's Dr. Ann, DRANN wellness.com, drannwellness.com. I have an online healthy living school. I have courses. I have the anti-inflammatory course. I have courses on sleep and weight loss and most all the hot topics, and you take them on your own time when you want. I mean, and they're very popular, and we've had an incredible response. I have written multiple books. You can see those on my website. The Eat Right for Life series of books. I do have grocery guides. So I have one specifically, focusing on inflammation. It's very detailed. It tells you all the different foods. Anyway, and I sell those on my site as well. So there are a host of resources there for you. The school, the books, the grocery guides. And I do a lot of my work is free. So my most popular free resource, if you want access to it, you just simply join my healthy living community. If you go to my website, you're going to see a sign up form. It should pop up. If not, there's a, sign up. And you get a free gift for signing up. That is the list of all the best, the 52 superstar foods. You can put that on your refrigerator. And then I have a free video tip that goes out that's the YouTube videos you were watching.
Okay.
So we produce a new one every week. We call it Make It Happen Monday. And it's the tip from the Healthy Living School. We try to keep these short and to the point, but really important, powerful, life-changing information. They're free. And then I have a free newsletter that I feature what I think are the month's best studies, or most most life-changing studies in my world. And I write up a little article about each one of those studies, and that's once a month. And again, those things are free. I probably have 1,800 blogs I've written.
Yeah.
Search in, you can put, and there's just so there's tons of free information also. So
that is awesome. Okay, so there are lots of good resources on pretty much anything, nutrition, healthy lifestyle, anything in between. So I will put those links down in the description below. And what was that?
I said thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Is there any parting words you want to leave with us before we hop off?
Yeah, I guess just some inspirational words, and just to remind yourself every day that the personal control you have over your own health destiny, because it is. So I say it, and I promise you can see I'm getting goosebumps. I mean, because it's so much more than people really realize.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is a truly important thing, that you have control. There are some things we don't have control over, but primarily there are a lot of things we do. And
That's
so
right.
I think that's absolutely very powerful, and that we can change our pain, we can change our lives, we can change our inflammation. We just have to take action.
That's right.
And
That's
that's
right.
one of the biggest
Don't
things.
expect a different result without changing the inputs. I mean, that's the real important
Exactly.
thing. You got to change. You
Exactly.
don't expect a different result unless you make a change. And the bigger the change you make, the bigger the change will be on the other side. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so
You're
much for
welcome.
joining
Thank
us
you
with
so
all
much.
this great information. And I
Okay.
will get those links posted down in the description. So if you want to check out any of those, feel free. Again, my name is Dr. Alyssa Kuhn. I'm with Keep the Adventure Alive. And I am out there trying to promote and spread optimism and hope with those that have arthritis. And I'm so glad that we got this information today. And I hope you found this helpful. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button below. And if you have any questions, put them down in the comments, and we'll get to you on those. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Absolutely. Bye.
My dog. Sorry.
That's